First of all, I want to welcome everyone. There's probably going to be others that come in later, but I want to welcome everybody to the 7th annual Disabilities Speaks. It starts as Challenge by Choice, and I'll explain that in a minute. Before I do any explaining and do the introductions, I want to point out that there's some deliciousness in the back of the room. So everyone, please help yourself to pizza. There's, I think there's, okay, it's still goodness, right? So there's food in the back, there's pizza in the back, and there's also soda, possibly water and some things. So please start there, and then we will kick this event off. We're going to keep eating, so don't stop what you're doing. But we're going to go ahead and get going, get started with Disability Speaks. As I mentioned a minute ago, well, let me start with introducing myself real quick. Steve Patterson. I forgot to tell him. Steve Patterson, Mayor of Athens. I'm also a former member of the Commission on Disabilities, served on the Commission for 4 years, and was the chair of the Commission for the last 2. And so I know how hard the Commission works when it comes to advocacy, working for those who may not be able to fully be their own voice, and also looking at things like accessibility and inclusion in the city. Commission on Disabilities is putting on this event tonight through the city. The Commission's been around since 2003. Some of the charter members are here. Scott Dennis was one of the charter members. Barry was charter or close to it. He's been involved for a long time. Larry Jagman. Who am I missing? Who else is here tonight who was a charter member? Anyway, it's been around for a long time. Our state representative for the 94th District, Debbie Phillips, was a council member back then. She's the one who at least championed that ordinance through that ended up becoming the ordinance that set the tone for there being a Commission on Disabilities. A lot of great things have happened with the Commission. I need to recognize real quick the Commission members. If you're here, please stand up briefly. I know Carolyn Lewis, who's the chair of the Commission on Disabilities, is not here tonight. Still recognize her. She's a great person. Paige Stratton. I think Paige was out front at the desk signing everyone in when they came in. Robin Biganti, who's the treasurer. Scott Dennis. Joe Lessinger's here tonight somewhere. Joe, just wave, Joe. Noah Tremblay, who isn't here tonight. Laura Edge. Daryl Purdy. Rose Deacus. I know Rose is here. And I have to say, with Rose did a lot of the heavy lifting for this to happen tonight. A lot of the coordinating and orchestrating this event. She worked long and hard, so. You know, the press releases, she got all the stuff out to media local, so thank you. David McNelly. David's not here tonight. Lori Kinney, and then kind of by default, I'm still on the commission as advisory to me, and I try to make it as often as I can, which these days, with my crazy life, is not as often as I wish I could. But I do want to recognize the Commission on Disabilities members. Let me kind of walk you through, for those of you who didn't take on a challenge, the way the challenge worked. The Commission on Disabilities reaches out to individuals throughout the city. We in the 7 years, we've tried to reach and have. We reached out to elected officials, to people on the school board, to teachers, to university faculty, administrators, coaches, everybody we can think of. We've also have reached out in the past to student athletes. We've reached out to, you name it. And it's been a very interesting swath of individuals who want to take on a challenge. The challenges range from anything from a physical disability to where you may have to use a wheelchair for an afternoon or for a day, or have a limb that's been bound up, or some simulation. There's visual simulations to where you may wear glasses where the lenses have Vaseline all over them to blur your vision, or they have obstruction to the glasses themselves in some fashion. They distort your vision in terms of depth and whatnot. And there's auditory simulations, hearing impairment simulations. The judge took on one, but you wear earmuffs or earplugs or something that's going to interfere with your ability to hear. We've done them before too with speech. This is my second round of doing this, how much I enjoy doing these, because it's an eye-opener. The first time I did this was about 4 years ago, and I took on a challenge to where I couldn't speak. And I had to figure out how I was going to be able to communicate with those in my environment. We also have a mental simulation, or a developmental disability or mental simulation. In the past, we've used what NAMI uses as what's called hearing voices, where you're listening to these audio tapes, and it's very not just distracting, it's kind of disturbing, because it simulates to some degree someone who's hearing voices in their head and trying to operate in the environment. We didn't have that this year, so we did a dementia simulation instead. So that's kind of how things work. This year, the people who took on the challenge, and who are going to report out tonight how that challenge went for them, was Judge George McCarthy. Like I said, he took on a hearing simulation. He said, I took on one. I took on dementia, and I'll explain how I did that in a minute. President of City Council Chris Nicely took on one of the challenges. She took on a vision disability. City Planner Paul Lowe, he took on a vision simulation, distortion simulation. Our Service Safety Director, Paula Ryan Mosley, she took on a physical disability, and OU's women's basketball coach, head coach, took on a physical disability, Dean Webb. Sorry? What did I say? Basketball? The net is just really big. That's the difference between it, and it's not circular. My bad. Volleyball. Much more fun. But before we get started, I know Larry Jegman. Larry wants to make a few words about the tables that you might be sitting at. So Larry, I know I caught you with a mouthful of food that was well timed.
Larry always has
Do you want us to go through a couple of those questions at the tables?
Sure.
Okay. You're at a table, and it has a label. And some of us have a label because of our disability. So the first question is for you to talk about is, why did you come to this table with this label? That's friends and family. This one's dementia. This one is hearing. There's vision. And there's physical. And what's your...
Hearing.
Okay, you've got a big hearing group here. Maybe you can talk there. So, why did you join this table?
Gary is great.
Talk to your table and tell them that. So, don't talk to me, talk to the people at your table, so it's a little conversation. Why? What's the issue? What's the concern? Why did you choose this table? Go ahead and talk to each other.
Just solve these ones. Just to teach you how to sit. This is where your dad told us to sit. Yep.
Who taught you to sit here? Oh, what's in that?
He simulated. I did a wheelchair simulation. He let it practice. There's a lot of these that found out the sidewalks aren't good as good as you thought they would be. The sidewalks on OU campus are not nearly as good as they would be. two wheelchair people fit in there?
And what about
Second question.
bathrooms?
Okay, you're at this table.
They're handicap accessible, yeah.
What about for your transgender students?
So what are the
You don't want to talk about that right now.
that a person has with this disability at your
That's
table?
they have
a big
single
issue.
bed.
This is real challenge for this table because they're the friends and family table. So take up the challenge. What is the complication that you have regarding friends and family? For you, yours is here, ours is dementia, with physical handicap, vision handicap.
I guess you probably have family members with disabilities.
That's me.
You said your dad is there.
Well, my father-in-law.
Does he still live by himself?
And I also have a son, Jamie. So he's
Yes,
well, he has some spasticity.
okay.
So also has some problems with he worked for 13 years on his son was a dishwasher and he was so he was went to school in Athens and we live out in the country.
Did he go, where did he go to elementary?
At the east.
Okay.
And then that's where I was up and told me you went because I really like East because it's
We have friends who
it's multicultural and you get to live and see a lot of different communities and kids. And the course is not good. It is because Mr. Gordon and I used to work as well.
Steve gave me a job, interrupt. I'm on the interrupter. Question 3, this is a thought question. He's really holding me to the clock. He said, we have no time to talk about it, just think about it. The question is, persons with this complication in life, being a friend, having dementia, having a hearing problem, having a vision problem, or having some physical disability, we who are more able-bodied and lucky at the moment, this year, but maybe not next. What can we do to be more helpful, to bring some hope and help to a person without putting them down? Sometimes our help can be hurtful. So this is just a thought question. And I think Steve is going to say that we're going to hear from those who engaged what it's like. And the challenge that Steve had is that he had to take on dementia for a day. And I'm really looking forward to hearing how he handled this. So I'm serious. So just plant that question here in your mind, and maybe you'll pick up a glimmer of an answer from those who simulate it, and then there's those who live with it. They're going to share it too. So you're going to get a kind of a short answer, and then maybe you'll get a longer answer when we keep listening to those who share.
Thank you.
Well, I learned a lot from Lisa Simpson.
So, as Larry said, now what we're going to do is we're going to take, kind of 3 to 5 minutes for each of us who took on the simulation to sit and kind of describe what our experience was like, given that we are not, this is a term that I have learned to embrace through the Commission on Disabilities, is being a TAB, which means temporarily able-bodied, which is what we all, everyone in this room is. So for those of us who took on the challenge. So we're going to start with the judge. Judge McCarthy, if you want to get up, I'm just going in order here. If you want to get up and just briefly describe your experience.
I took on the hearing disability and used earmuffs to probably blocked out 75 to 90% of sound. And as you can imagine, it's exactly what you would think, that you cut off your hearing and you appreciate right away how much you rely on your hearing in your daily affairs and just doing day-to-day activities. And at first it was kind of peaceful, and I got to tell you, it was really nice. But as time went on, one of the first things I recognized is that, and I'm not soft-spoken, as I talk loudly anyway, but I was talking even louder and wasn't aware of it, because I realized finally that you rely on your own sound of your voice at that level as to whether you're talking at the appropriate volume or not. So people with that sometimes do talk at a higher level, and sometimes that's misinterpreted. The other thing I found is that I could handle it. I did a good job. I started first thing in the morning when I got to work, and got to about noon and did fine, but when I got to about 1 o'clock, I think it finally started really occurring to me that you're very isolated with a hearing disability. And if that much is cut out, you do become very, very much compartmentalized. And that is, and I've talked to people and they've said that, kind of a sideline of that is that you kind of get depressed because you get isolated even when you're around people, you can't hear, you kind of feel excluded, or people talk around you, or such things. So that was something that was a little bit eye-opening to me. And it did click after all these years why my uncles were playing the TV real loud. We'd always go and visit, and the TV would be on 10, and be like, well, Uncle Johnny said, no, he has difficulty hearing. Well, you may hear that, but you really don't understand it until you have to do it yourself. I myself play a lot of music. I play classical, or usually some classical music. It's kind of background noise where I am, which helps me kind of do my reading and writing. And I had to turn that on way loud. They would come in from outside my office and say, that's really loud. I can't hear. So that was my experience with it. So it is, you do become sympathetic. And the thing that I think you take away from it is that at the end of the day, as the mayor indicated, is that we are all able-bodied. We take it for granted. We're blessed. And everybody has probably been on crutches or used a cane now and then when they've been injured, and you realize how difficult it is just to get around in that limited period of moment. But certainly, the older you get especially too, you can appreciate more and more people being affected. And you have to be a little more courteous, I think. And I think it really opens your eyes to give that person who's doing things a little bit slower or repetitively the benefit, and maybe have a little bit more understanding that you would otherwise normally may not have, or patience that you might not otherwise have.
Thank you.
Steve, there's a name that's not on our program, Jane Richter.
Jane Richter?
Yes, she is prepared to share what it's like in her household, or it's been there for a while, meaning hearing loss.
Okay.
Is that right? I was told that if you're not prepared, then you don't have to say anything. But if you, I apologize. I thought Jane had volunteered and knew what this was about, because we always have a person who lives with it. So, what's life like day and night for a year or two at home?
Well, I just at my table that when he asked me, when Barry asked me to come, and I thought, well, how can I be of help? And she said, well, you can share your disability. And I said, my disability? And she said, you're hearing. And I realized, oh yes, I really am hard of hearing. Oh, yeah. Can you hear me? Okay, well, it's difficult because, as you've already been told, it's marginalized as a person. I find it very difficult to go out to a restaurant and eat a restaurant and actually hear people that I'm eating with, and carry be part of the conversation. So I sit and smile a lot and that sort of thing, but it isn't very pleasurable for me because I don't hear what they're saying. And if a person doesn't look at me, you know, if they talk to me across this way or this way, I don't hear. And the very sad thing about it is my daughter and her husband and their 2 children speak really softly. But when I go to visit, I really am outside the loop, and I have to keep asking. Even though my son has kind of told them how to talk to me and always look at me, it doesn't always work. So I do feel marginalized right in my own family, which is very hard. And again, I do a lot of smiling and just sitting back and not being part of the conversation sometimes. When I go to the movies, I go downtown, I go out here sometimes Grand, and I find that sometimes those little headphones work, but very often they don't. And it's not just the battery, they always are changing the batteries. But you sit down in the film, and you find out, oh, it's not working, so you have to get up, miss this part of the film, go back out, and another one. Sometimes I just get 2 because I'm not going to miss this movie and keep running after. And I keep telling them, I think your machines are not working. You probably have to invest in new machines or keep them up hard. It's not the batteries. I don't know if the rest of you have this or not. Now, downtown, they have a closed caption. And I thought it was kind of funny for a long time because we just would go and it tells you on when you're looking at the movie and it is in closed, you can use the closed caption. And you just put this little gadget in the seat and twirl it around so you can actually see it. And so one night it turned out that I met with another friend who was also hard of hearing, and we had to sit together and put this in a position so we could both see it. Then Mary came with a friend who was hard of hearing. There were 3 of us trying to look at this machine. So my husband mentioned to them that maybe they should order more. So now they have 3. I think they got 3. But it was amazing to me that all that time I've been going, must have been other people needing it, but it never was a problem until that particular time. So, and I used to like to take classes. I haven't done that for a while, but I'm not sure I can do that anymore, depending on the professor. I don't know what else. If anybody wants to ask me a question, it's fine.
You're good.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to
So
it.
it is isolating. I feel very sad sometimes. And I try not to let it bother me, but
Hold the
it
mic by
does.
your face. We couldn't hear you when you moved the mic away.
Ginger filled up.
I said it's isolating. I get very depressed at times, very sad. Have a little moment of self-pity. It's not always awful, but it sometimes can be. And people are not too happy when they have to keep repeating. And I did have some little training about, I shouldn't just say what, I should say I didn't hear the part after such and such, so that the person doesn't have to repeat everything. That's useful.
I hate to disappoint you, Larry, but I'm going to skip over myself. Don't worry, I'll talk about mine. I want to jump down to Chris Nisley and have Chris talk about her experience with her visual simulation.
I ended up wearing one eye patch during the day, and I only cheated 2 or 3 times. And I'll share a secret. I'm a backseat driver when my husband drives. So today I was even more anxious because my vision on the left was cut off. So when cars were coming in on the passing lane, you know, I was turning my body all the way around. Oh, there's a car in the lane. I see it, Chris. So it did make me anxious at certain points. And then I walk in the morning. So I did the morning walk, and sometimes I'll pick up trash. And so I found myself slowed down this morning because the depth perception was more difficult. So that was kind of slowed in that activities. I had some computer work to do, and so I was slowed down some, like I think Paul has shared. You probably had more of it even than I did. So it took me a little bit longer, and that's one of the points I got frustrated. You know, there are like 14 emails you're supposed to be answering, and I finally flipped the patch off, and that's how I got to do this. I think that's the one other thing I noticed during the day, when I was walking over here tonight, there were other people on the sidewalk, and it's interesting. I don't know if I was reading into it or not, but I often make eye contact with somebody, and this is a small enough town, you can usually walk down and say, "Hi Scott, how are you?" You know, or something. And people avoided eye contact with me. And it's like the patch made them, I think, feel uncomfortable. And they didn't know whether to ask something or not. There was a woman in Lowe's today when we were running errands, and she said, "Did you have eye surgery?" And then she told me about her surgery. But she was really the only person that was comfortable with asking me, what's the problem? So it was an interesting day. Thanks.
What we'll do is I think we'll go to Paul Loeb next, and then we'll have an individual who lives with a visual disability.
Hi everyone, can everyone hear me? Okay, so I had a vision disability as well. I started yesterday just by going about half the day without my glasses on, and that in itself is a very difficult experience for me. Just looking right now, I can't see anybody. I can read Scott's name tag, I can recognize Scott a little bit, but everybody else is more or less a blur. So I spent yesterday afternoon just at my office, at my desk, working through my emails and things like that, and trying to read documents, and I had a very difficult time doing that. I cheated a few times today because I had to drive, and so I did not feel comfortable at all doing an eye patch or any of those things while I was behind the wheel, of course. This afternoon, though, I did have an opportunity. There was some equipment that was given to me that I'm going to put my glasses back on, actually, before I get a headache. It was an apparatus that put on my eyes without my glasses on, so that already was a challenge for me. And then it basically took away all my peripheral vision and gave me tunnel vision, and everything was distorted. And I had to do some typing up some minutes from one of the city's commissions. And it's a project that typically takes me about 15 minutes to clean up my Word document from a meeting from the other night. And it took me about an hour and a half just to do this. And a lot of it was just clearing up punctuation and typos. And I couldn't see, my balance was off just slightly because of it. So even, I'm usually a pretty good typer without looking at the keyboard at all. And I noticed that my fingers were hitting the wrong keys constantly. And I think just because my balance and my sense of direction was slightly askew. And so I had to look down at my keyboard, and almost after every tap I would have to look back at the screen. And then I couldn't find my cursor, and so I'd have to sit there for about 5 minutes and keep moving it around because my vision was so narrow. And then I decided I needed a break from that because I was getting extremely frustrated. And so then I tried to get up and go to the restroom and get a drink of water. And that was at about 4:15 or 4:30, and most of the people in my office, I think, had left. And I thought I was going to break my neck because I thought I was going to trip and fall. And so I stopped doing that when I realized that there was nobody in the office if I did fall. So it was, I guess in short, I feel really fortunate that despite not having perfect vision, I feel really grateful that my vision issues can be easily remedied by glasses. But it also made me aware of just, I guess, how lucky I am that is a problem that is easy for me to overcome. Just listening to the judge, his experience, and talking yesterday, I do have a slight hearing disability that I'm aware of, and it's only when I'm in a crowd. And if there's a lot of background noise, whether it be from a lot of chatter or music at a bar or restaurant, I cannot concentrate, and I can't hear the person who I'm trying to have a conversation with, what they're telling me. Sometimes I think it's because I'm really tall, and most people are trying to yell up at me. But I've noticed as I get older that it's a problem that keeps coming back. Now, when a room is quiet, or if it's just one or two people, or if I'm watching TV or listening to music on my own, it's not an issue at all. But when I get in these crowds, I feel really disoriented, but also really frustrated because I can't carry on conversations with friends or family. So that was my experience today. It was really rewarding. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
You know, Larry did a great job of inviting guests. Larry, do you want to introduce our guest tonight who lives with a visual disability?
You wonder who that is? Marilyn Smith. Marilyn Smith. She's been a faculty member at Hocking College. Her husband was a faculty member, Bill Smith, at OU. And Marilyn is experiencing some vision complications, which you may name and explain, because they're all a little bit unique to us as individuals.
Several years ago, excuse me. Several years ago, the optometrist told me that I had macular degeneration, but it was the good kind, the dry kind. Well, about 2 years ago, it became the wet kind. And I've had a particularly difficult situation in that I've been seeing a retinal specialist in Worthington at least once a month. I get a shot in my eye, or eyes sometimes, and sometimes twice a month. In March, I got 3 shots in my eyes. It's kind of like looking at you through gray shears. If you're up about as close as these people at the table, I could recognize you. If you're at one of the farther tables, I might not recognize you. So I tell people I know, if you think I've walked by and ignored you, I haven't. I probably really didn't see you. One thing I've become aware of, I don't think doctors really realize the impact it has on our lives. They know all the medical stuff. But about 1.5 years ago, I asked this specialist about agencies that work with the blind, because I'd heard about it when I was visiting in another state, and he said, "Oh, you're not bad enough, you don't need that yet." Well, I kept asking around, and through word of mouth from someone else, I did get connected with the state agency. Believe me, it's definitely worth it, and I am bad enough that I needed it. The doctors just don't realize how it impacts our daily living. I feel like a properly equipped house now needs to have magnifying glass and flashlights in every room. I go to look at the bookshelf, and unless it's right there at eye vision and dark print on a light background, I can't read it. I have to get the flashlight and shine directly on, and sometimes hold the flashlight and the magnifying glass. In fact, I keep one of each in my purse now. Going to restaurants, sometimes I have to pull out a lighted magnifying glass in order to read the menu. A couple of other points I wanted to mention. It definitely works best if I see. I can do a lot of things, but it's so much harder. It's such a strain. Black on white is good. Even this black on yellow is harder on my eyes. And when I go over to Aldi's where they have the specials, the black on the red, I have to pull the price tag out and hold it right up to my nose in order to be able to read it. Because black on red is, and when you drive down the street, signs that are like that, lots of times I can't see them. That's one of the reasons why, even though I can still legally drive, I'm greatly restricted. I don't drive at night, I don't drive out of town, I don't drive in bad weather. I'm fortunate that my husband is with me. He does most of the driving, and when the weather's bad, he takes me places I need to go. So this is one thing that has made a difference. Even things like putting stuff in the oven. I can't read the dials. The blind agency gave me some little things, rubber things to put on, and I put one on 400, one on 350, one on 300, so I can tell where I'm setting the dial. My favorite things to do are reading and any kind of needlework, which of course is a problem with eyes. I can still do it, but I spend more time threading needles than I do sewing. It's affected me in things like that. So, yeah. The blind agency, the state agency on disabilities gave me what I call my halo. They were asking me, well, what did I miss most? And I said, I'd like something lighted, magnifying glass, that I could be hands-free, because I'd gone on the internet and looked, and after spending a lot of time reading the reviews and everything, I finally ordered one. It was a piece of junk. Didn't do anything, but they gave me what I refer to as my halo. I can put it on my head and then lower it down, and it magnifies, not as much as I'd like it to, but some, and lights up, so I can even use it to do handwork when we're riding in the car at night. And that agency really does do a lot of good, in spite of the doctors thinking we don't need it. Yes, telephones now that I can see the readout. I got a new cell phone because I couldn't read my old one. So I got the 6 Plus. If they had a bigger one than the 6 Plus, I'd get it. So basically, that's how it's affected my life. It's slowed me down. I can do things, but it's so much harder.
She used to sit at home and read papers, and she'd go through a stack of papers. When she taught English, she'd go through a stack of papers in no time at all. I couldn't figure out how she does it, but she surely couldn't now.
I'm so glad I'm retired.
Yeah, we'll do the 2 physical disabilities. We'll start with Paula.
I'm the only one with a cheat sheet. I'm not sure what that means. Although I cheated a lot more than twice, I'll say. So the eve before challenged by choice, I got anxious. I got levels of concern. What is the disability I'm going to receive? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do my work? How is this going to affect my life? And to even have that luxury, to even know when something's going to hit you. So I started my disability with a walker. I found I was the recipient of concern from fellow employees. Are you okay? Are you going to be okay? Are you going to be able to do your job? And I, like Chris, wondered, am I reading into this? Or are they seriously questioning now whether or not I can serve in the capacity because now I have a physical ailment that has diminished me physically? I found the built environment extremely difficult. So at home, I started yesterday as well and then went in today. I've got stairs to get into my house. The laundry's in the basement. I do very few household chores, but laundry's mine. I couldn't do laundry. My husband's disabled. He looks at me last night at the dinner table and he's like, you're supposed to be caring for me. Now what do we do? We didn't really figure it out. Other than I knew that I had, who gets that ability to know that it's temporal? We're only going to be in this situation for this period of time. That was to know. I felt like I aged overnight. I was listening to some others that, like, first thing in the morning, there's that walker. Added that walker. And I only had it half a day so far. But I just felt like I was aged. If this was permanent, how would I deal with that? How would I live, work, play? At work, I couldn't get to my office. We're working on that ADA lift, but it's not there, so I cheated because I had to go into the office. For lunch, I said, I've got to do Court Street. And I've listened to people all the time. Your sidewalks are bad, look at the condition of the bricks. And with a walker, it was repeatedly cheating because it gets stopped. And I have to lift it up, and I have to go and lift it up. Everything takes a lot more time. And again, people are looking at you. I had someone come up to me and say, what happened? It doesn't look like anything happened to you. I thought, we talked about that yesterday. Why should I have to put a brace on my leg or knee or something to make it be a disability? So that something has to be visual to everybody to recognize that I have a disability? Some comments that I also had was, that looks natural to you. That's what I mean about aging overnight. I look just like my 85-year-old mother who has a walker. Somebody else said it's too early in your life for that. Well, again, nobody gets to choose when they're going to be hit with a disability. And lastly, and this has been a big thing for me, I said my husband was disabled. He has a bad heart. So when we go places and we go and we see signs that have the universal wheelchair for signing and whatever, I wholeheartedly believe it should be a heart. I think that the heart should be what designates for all in terms of people living with disabilities.
Indeed. If you want to talk about your experience.
My name is Dean Webb, and I coach volleyball here at Ohio University. And I was given a physical disability as well. And it was interesting in that the culture I'm around is on one end of the spectrum, in that people are highly athletic, are able to do things that a typical adult cannot do. Speed, jump, all those things that have to happen in collegiate athletics. And so I was looking forward to this challenge. I also was nervous last night. I was maybe didn't sleep as well because I was maybe a little concerned about what today would be. I am exceedingly type A, so I did not cheat at all. And that was good for me, bad for my wife and daughters that are over here. And so I started today, I was basically did not have the use of my legs and was going to be in a wheelchair all day. And so I started my day after my wife addressed me by putting myself on the floor from my bed without the use of my legs. And it was about as graceful as it sounds. And my house is not even slightly accessible via wheelchair. And so I went face first down 2 flights of stairs, just letting myself down one hand at a time. Gravity was my friend. Thankfully it ended at 3 p.m. before I had to go back up those stairs. So made my way down, and that was good. I felt like I had accomplished something, but at the bottom of our stairs, there sat the wheelchair, and I didn't have a way to get into it. And my wife and my oldest daughter, they're smaller than I am, and they were trying to get my 190 pounds off the floor into the wheelchair, and it just wasn't happening. And so we finally managed to get a couple of chairs that I could push up on and got in that, and so that was just the experience of just getting out of the house. There's no way into or out of our house without taking steps. And so that was the beginning of the day, and then getting into my truck. It's just a typical pickup truck, but it's going up to get in. And again, they're smaller, and I'm trying to play this out and really be fully engaged, and so they had to drag me to the truck, just with my legs totally still, and they got me in. I got to work. We had practice at Ping this morning. Thankfully, I have a large assistant coach who just picked me up and put me in the wheelchair, so that part was easier. It was definitely different in the gym today. I'm usually very active with our team, and today, of course, I was not able to do as much as I normally could, even affecting safety. I'm normally, if there's a ball that comes near a player, they might jump and land on it. I'll run out and get out of there or something like that. And today, I tried to push out and get out there, and I was nowhere close to getting there on time. And so it limited some of what I did. I think when I left Ping to go back over to the convocation center, probably the first thing that I really noticed that you take for granted when you're walking, you think all the sidewalks are flat because they feel like they are. But this very slight grade to allow water to run off of them, I had no idea. I had never been in a wheelchair, but it aggressively was pushing me towards the road. And most of my effort was spent turning uphill, not trying to go forward. And I had no idea of that. Little things like going to the restroom. You know, the first time going to the restroom, it took me 20 minutes just to figure out how everything and pull myself up on the side of the stall and all of that. A little better, got down to 10 minutes by the end of the day. But just little challenges you take for granted. I went over, I had lunch at one of the dining halls on campus. I called it a school cafeteria earlier, and I realized that's not the best thing to call a college dining hall. But I realized that it affected my food choices because I could balance a tray on my lap and still wheel around, but not if there were any liquids. And so I had to get something that was solid, something that would not slosh out. Couldn't get a drink because I didn't know how to get back to where I was. I could hold it in one hand, but then if I were to hold it in my left hand and push with the right wheel, then I would turn left. And so I would be switching it back and forth and doing a zigzag pattern, and I was getting enough looks already, and so I decided not to do that. Someone was kind enough to assist. I think the other thing that was interesting for me is just the wide range of help you receive or don't receive. Some people at Ping, at the dining services today, were extremely helpful. Let me get the door. They really were great assistants to me. And then there are some college kids, blame it on cell phones, blame it on finals, or just blame it on the age, almost taken out by a car. When I was I was already in the street, and someone was really close at a high rate of speed. And I'm like, wow, there's 3 of us walking, and then I'm in a chair, and how do you not see me? And so that was interesting, just to see how people related to me. But it was a very eye-opening event for me today. Certainly allowed me to look at things differently, even the way that we do events in the convocation center, and how do people get to where they need to be? How do they get to their seats? The ramps are pretty steep, and I'm young enough that I can get myself up those ramps, but I was pretty tired when I got to the top. If someone who's not as strong upper body or maybe is a little older is trying to get up a ramp, how do they get in there and still enjoy the game without having to call a friend to help them at that moment? So it's caused us to look at some things in our building a little differently, and so it's been a great opportunity, and I appreciate the opportunity I was given.
And Larry, our guest tonight, oh, Mary Deacus.
Rose.
Sorry, Mary.
Here I am.
Rose.
Not my simulation.
Rose, and like, sorry, Rose. Oh, sure. Like Paula, I have a cheat sheet. Whoa. What is this, sleep? My disability resulted from a car accident 26 years ago. And my surprise at my disability is you can be just fine one day, and a millisecond later, you're toast, right? And my husband and I were raising 3 children. I was teaching at OU, completing my PhD in Kent, and I even had just chaired our Girl Scout cookie chair, cookie race, what do they call it? The sale, that's what it's called. Anyway, and then a neighbor ran a stop sign a block from my house, 11 o'clock in the morning, and I woke in the hospital 2 months later. I'd suffered a brain bleed. I didn't have any outside injuries, but they had to use jaws of life to get me out of there, and life led me to Columbus. And this is my son, who was only 7 then, but meanwhile, to flash forward to 26 years later, obviously I never finished my PhD, nor did I teach again. But one thing that I wanted to share was that even though I have double vision from the head injury, and so I have to have people help me walk, but the bottom line is that life is still good because you have friends and loved ones, and that's what, and as friends, as you know, people who have disabilities, as some people were saying today, is that you get the feeling like people look past you or don't look at you. And the fact is you have to have people recognize that you can see, or what I think everybody should do is see the person, not the disability. That's what life is about. And I will close, because I know we're in a time frame here, in that I read someplace one time that a person only needs 3 things to be happy. Someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. And I've been blessed to have all 3 of those things. And I think that when people talk about, like sad things, you have to think about good things too.
Thank you, Rose. My simulation, as I mentioned earlier, was that I was to simulate an individual living with dementia. Think about that for a minute. That's a simulation that's not a simulation that is even conceivably easy to do for someone who's temporarily able-bodied. I can think clearly. How do I forget something? How do I do whatever? Again, in not knowing, my only lens of that, and it was episodic because I live out on the East Coast, live in the Ohio, I live here in Athens, was when my mother was diagnosed with dementia and declined rapidly. And so the times I was around here getting to see as a son the steady decay and decline with dementia. So I twisted this around, Larry. Larry said, this is what you need to do, or this is what you should do. I decided to twist it around a little bit to where I became a caretaker for an individual living with simulated dementia, that being my wife. I asked my wife, I said, what I want you to do is, and she's a counselor, and she kind of has a little bit of a lens and some experience as well. So she would not remember things. She would stand there and just stare off into space. She would, take off her clothes at home, randomly or whatever, and to kind of give you a little inside view of how she loves to cook. I'm usually the one at the end of the night who's taking care of my daughters and whatnot, getting them ready for bed. We share that duty, but she loves to cook. So it kind of started off the evening to where, you know, I'm sitting there wondering, well, what are we having for dinner tonight? And dinner? Oh yeah. And so she would go in and she would grab something random out of the refrigerator and put it on the stovetop. And then I'm going, is dinner coming? And I have 2 4-year-old daughters, so the whole family is experiencing this too, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But so I had, you know, honey, is the stove on? Oh, the stove. So turn the stove on. Then she forgets to take the food off. And it just became, for me, it wasn't so much frustration, it was concern. It was safety concern, you know, in the kitchen and that environment. The thing that was really interesting for me was to watch my 4-year-old daughters, who are just completely confused and clueless as to what's going on. You know, it's time for the girls to have a bath, and they have, you know, I usually start the bath and wash their hair and whatnot, and then I'm usually doing something else, and my wife Connie then is finishing up the bath and drying them off and stuff like that. Well, 45 minutes later, our bath time is usually about, you know, 10, maybe 15 minutes. We let them play for a while. 45 minutes later, I go walk in the bathroom. I hear the girls who are sitting there having a good old time. Although, Daddy, the water's really cold. Why is Mommy not getting me out of the tub? And so 45 minutes later, and I'm going, Connie. And it wasn't frustration. Again, it was concern. But it was also, just to share with you, as I started off this story, thinking, luckily, I have a sister who was in Portland, Oregon, taking care of my mother when she was going through dementia. It was sad. I found myself, more than anything else, being really saddened by the fact that I couldn't spend more time with my mother when she was dealing with, because I could only imagine what my sister was having to go through on a daily basis in caretaking. If I'm watching this for 4 hours, 5 hours in the evening, whatever, my sister had to live with it for 4 years solid, you know, and as some of you have described your disabilities, your simulations, and I'm glad that everyone's kind of, who took on it is cognizant of this, is that, guys, we have just had a 12 to maybe, you know, 16-hour snapshot of what someone's life is like from now, you know, likely to, you know, throughout the rest of their lives. So that was kind of my takeaway, and I appreciated the challenge. But I felt like I would do disservice to anybody who lives with dementia, because I'm not going to make something to try and fill that role. But what was good was to kind of flip it and understand what a caretaker goes through, and the respite that is definitely needed for someone who is a caretaker. So that was my experience. And Larry,
we have 3 people here to make a comment. Dwayne Bump is first, and my wife Mary Tracy Jagman is second. And Joan has an announcement about caregiving support. Dwayne, you're on.
Oh, thank you. Dwayne Bump here. My wife, Karen Bump, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, which is, of course, part of the dementia disease. It's probably the most severe of them all. But there's a lot of different degrees. She was diagnosed at the end of 2012 by Ohio State Neurology. They used radiation imaging to diagnose it, and they said it definitely was Alzheimer's. And many times it's hard to differentiate between the different types of dementia, but she had it. It's very difficult. She passed away this past November 2015 after 20-some months in a nursing home. Her progression was rather slow. I remember the first thing that I noticed that was unusual. Our daughter lives in Cincinnati, and we were traveling down 32 and just having a casual conversation, and she used the word, the wrong person when addressing me. She said, Dwayne thinks this, Dwayne thinks that. Well, Dwayne's sitting here driving the car. I thought, well, now that's unusual. But things progress, as it goes. Things progress along, and the frustration level gets to be a real problem. Telephone cannot concentrate well enough. She had problems dialing the number, couldn't focus well enough to put it completely in, and those types of things. But and when we finally got to Ohio State to get a final diagnosis on it, they counseled my son-in-law and I about it, and you do not understand. There's no way you can understand what goes on, what they see, what they feel, and that type of thing. It's very difficult. Alzheimer's has one kind of definite characteristic that's different from other dementia, and that's the anger and the agitation level of it. I took care of Karen at home 24/7. Before she went into the nursing home, it was very difficult for a year. I couldn't leave her. I couldn't keep her in bed. I probably lived with 2 or 3 hours of sleep for over a year. You couldn't couldn't be away from her because she lost motor skills. She didn't know who you were. She was very agitated, couldn't dress herself, just couldn't take care of herself. I don't like to throw those kind of things out at you because everybody is affected differently. So I don't want to discourage anybody in that regard, but all I say is I probably waited a little bit too long for outside help. It's available. Use it if you're in a family situation like that. Be proactive about it. I myself probably waited a little bit too long, and it didn't help me, and it didn't help my wife Karen either to wait too long. I can take questions about it. It's kind of hard to talk about it a little bit because her passing wasn't all that long ago. But I sure would like to help anybody with questions and how they can get help and that type of thing. You're welcome to ask questions if you like.
We'll ask some later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, his contact information, so that way Disability Commission people, if anybody wants to talk to you.
And this is the first question. What's your contact information? Write it down. Mary, you're on.
Well, I'm Mary Tracy Jageman, and the first time I noticed that I had anything wrong at all, I had flown to California with Larry and my son, and we were sitting around in his home, and my brother-in-law, and I said to Larry, I can't find the bathroom. And of course, he wanted to point me to Jerry's bathroom. And I said, no, Larry, I can't remember how the bathroom attaches to the rest of the house. I don't know how to get there from the kitchen or from the bathroom or wherever I am. And so I had him draw me a picture of it so that I could realize where that bathroom connected in and where it was in our house. And that was the first thing that I noticed. And that's the first thing that everybody else noticed. And then I kind of didn't say anything more about it. Didn't think I was getting any worse or anything like that until I started to come into the kitchen and I'd say to Larry, where do I put this? Where do we keep it? And then later I'd come in and I'd say, Larry, where is that glass? Maybe not even that glass. Where can I find the glass? And then I realized that it was getting worse, and I've just been kind of putting it back in place somewhere back there and saying, I really don't have it very bad. And I don't when I think about how his life was. But it's not easy. I cry sometimes.
That's lovely that you shared that. My name is Joan Stroh. I'm a counselor and a social worker. I'm in private practice, but I also have run a support group for caregivers of the elderly. It is sponsored by the Alzheimer's Association that covers our area, and Kimes Nursing Home has hired me to run it. It's the second Tuesday of the month from 5:30 to 6:30, and I've got some flyers out on the table. I start at 5:30, and I welcome anybody who's caring for an elderly person. You don't have to have a dementing illness to come. Many people do, but others have other handicaps and disabilities. And I end at 6:30 because people need to get out of here. In the group, I deal with whatever walks in the door, and often have things to share in the community through either the area Ages Down Aging or new things that are coming down the pipe. One of the other things that I wanted to say is that one of the other things I do is work with AARP Ohio. I'm on their executive council because AARP has decided that caregiving issues is a national issue as well as a state issue. And because that's what I've done all of my career, they asked me to join. Well, we have some very exciting news. It looks like next week there's going to be legislation presented that's called the CARE Act. And in this legislation, when somebody who is covered under Medicare goes in the hospital and they're being discharged, with their permission, their family members or support group, whoever that is going to be contacted and taught about things that need to be done to keep them healthy and stop them from going back in the community or back in the hospital. One of the examples I use, if somebody's discharged with congestive heart failure and they go home and they start gaining weight, if they weigh themselves and realize they've gained 5 or 6 pounds, they call their doc or healthcare provider. That can be treated, and they don't have to wait until they're in danger and readmitted to the hospital. This is going to keep people at home safer, healthier, and it's going to save us as taxpayers a lot of money. So, again, I've got some information out of the table about this. So when it rolls out, I need you to be loud and proud and get in touch with our elected representatives, okay? And I also have some cards if I can be of help to anybody in the community. People call me all the time, and I feel that I live in such a wonderful community. For me to be able to give something a little bit back is really a privilege. Thank you.
Thanks, Joan. If nothing else, Athens is loud and proud.
I just wanted to add something because several years ago, I was taking care of 3 family members all at once and going nuts. And I knew Joan, we've been friends for over the years, and I was able to call her. She'd meet me over at the bakery, we'd talk. It was somebody that I could talk to. She was my advocate, and I really don't know I would have done without it. I didn't have any family members here or anything. So I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Barry. All right, Daryl, we may have to abbreviate. So Daryl's going to kind of take over and make a few words.
Very few. My misfortune is your good fortune. So, listen, what I was going to do is give you the context for what we know to be true of the current realities for folks with living with disabilities the world over. And I was going to give you the Cliff Notes version. I'm now going to give you the Cliff Notes version of the Cliff Notes version. And good luck to us all. Let me just say this. Today, unlike any other time in our world's history, folks are showing up in our world with disabilities so that today we have in our world over 1.2 billion people who live with disabilities. And we are told that that number is going to increase exponentially, much to the much because of the baby boomers, who I guess there was like a love-in a lot of years ago, the world over. And as a result of that love-in, the baby boomer group came into being. And those of us who are in that group are going to be retiring or aging out soon. And as you get older, of course, your bodies start to fall apart. Many of us have a head start on the rest of you. Listen, I want to give the rest of the time that I was going to use to a person I had an opportunity to meet with at McDonald's. And before that, he and I were corresponding by email. To be honest, Gary, my time with you was the first time I've sat with a man of God in quite a while. And you gotta know, I was nervous because I didn't know if lightning was gonna hit me for whatever reason, and there are lots of reasons. I want to introduce to you Gary Humphrey, who is going to tell us a little bit about what he's been learning with regard to his life work and living with a disability. And I'm going to shut up and let him do his thing.
Thank you.
I'm his right-hand person.
Good evening. I want to welcome you all to the 6th Annual the Athens City Commission on Disabilities. I am Gary Wayne Humphrey Jr., and I'm from Gloucester, Ohio. I was born in 1984 at Ohio State University Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. I was born 2 months premature, weighing 1 pound and 14 ounces, and was very ill from the day I was born. I've had hundreds and hundreds of x-rays, tests, but no doctor could diagnose my illnesses. I spent the first most of my year in intensive care unit of Columbus, Ohio, in Children's Hospital. The next 16 years of my life were spent traveling back and forth to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Then I went to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, where I was finally diagnosed with a very rare disease called Arm syndrome. Very little is known about the syndrome, so as symptoms they appeared, they were treated as best they could. I had a tracheotomy at 6 months old and had multiple reconstructions to get it removed. I want to take the time to tell you at least some of my illnesses that I've had, so many of you have better understanding of my disabilities. I've had spinal meningitis, hearing loss and ear surgery, pericarditis, cyclotic stenosis, face and chin advancement, sinus reconstruction, pneumonia multiple times, congestive heart failure, appendicitis, hernias, growth hormone deficiency, low immune system, lung collapse and low lung function, pseudotumor cerebri, GR malformation. For a while, I lost the ability to swallow. I had been fed by a feeding tube. 3 brain surgery. And followed it after that going into respiratory failure. At the age of 31, I had to have a tracheotomy back in. I've had a total of 86 operations to the date. It will be rescheduled this summer for several more surgeries so I can get it out. As you can see, I've had many ups and downs in my life, but I've also had many victories also. I attended East Elementary in Athens to take advantage of the hearing loss class until the age of 7th grade. Then I attended Trimble High School. Many times along the way I was told I would never make it through college, even though I was on the National Honor Society. I had to work slow, methodical, require a quiet place to work. After graduating from high school, I attended Hawking College, where I got a degree in web page design and accounting. I worked at Kroger's for a few years, but I was not satisfied. Felt I needed to do something more in my life. So I moved to Kentucky and attended Kentucky Christian University and got a bachelor's degree in Bible, ministry, preaching, and accounting. I was ordained as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ in February 2013. During my time in college, I had many difficult days. My health greatly affected my stamina, and I suffered from depression. Some of my professors discouraged my efforts and stated that I did not have what become to be a minister. They made fun of my stature, my appearance, and my voice. But I had many professors that cared enough to encourage me and guide me. I never regretted attending college and can't wait for the day when I can serve the Lord full time. I've always had a raspy voice from vocal cord damage. One of the most important things a public speaker should have is a good voice. Now I'm here with you with the trick once again. I never know, but I might have a stopping section in my airway. I still hope that one day my vocal cords can be repaired. I've had a lot of people tell me being disabled is not always a bad thing. Being disabled does not mean you can't do anything at all. It just simply means you have to do things in a different manner. People have different kinds of disabilities, with some more severe than others. I've had people ask me how I get through all these health issues. Well, there's one thing I just focus on. The one thing is, that helped me the most. Bring to Jesus Christ for his healing on these things I have to deal with. I'm blessed to have a family that stood beside me through it all. My parents, Carrie and Laverne, had made many sacrifices so that I could have everything that I need. My older sister, Heidi, teaches integrated preschool. My younger brother, Chris, is an architecture student at Ohio State. And my younger sister, She was adopted by my parents at the age of 2. She had shaken baby syndrome, cerebral palsy, caused by her biological father at the age of 3 months. I have seen her struggle with speech, partly paralyzed and difficult with speech. She never lets it get her wet or down. She had been an inspiration to me. One thing that had always been difficult for me is not being able to plan ahead, because I'm always been waiting for the next circle. But you know, I try to look at the positive things that I have once complete my life. Sometimes it can be very difficult. I deal with all my disabilities. I'm trying to find a way that's easier and makes more sense to me. There have been times in my life that I've had to make changes in my life in order to do the things or make the things like they should work. There's also been things in my life that I have not turned out the way I thought they should be because of my disabilities. My advice for those who have some kind of disability is to take one day at a time. I know that is easier said than done. Trust me, I know it's hard. But I have learned, especially over the last 2 years, I have learned to look at the whole picture. You have to look at what's important the most. Faith in God will give you the strength you need to get from one day to another. I would say, so no matter what kind of disability you have, you need to stay active in what you like doing. I encourage you strongly to get out and get involved in something that lifts you up. Surround yourself with friends, family that are encouraging. Never give up on hope. They're always there. Thank you to the Disability Group for inviting me to speak tonight. It has encouraged me to carry on. Good luck. May God bless you all. Let us pray. Our Father God, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for everything we do. Father, we ask you to touch on those who have disability. We don't know what all the disability they have. I pray you'll touch on them in some way. Watch over and guide us. Christ name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Gary. That's what it's all about.
Thank you, Daryl, and I too thank you, Gary. That is what it's all about. I was moved. I think everyone in here was moved, or at least I hope they were. Great words. Thank you, sir. This brings us to the highlight of tonight, the awarding of the relatively new. It was 2015 that City Council approved for the Athena Award to be awarded. The Commission on Disabilities has given out an award for many, many years, and it was always called the Service Award, which I always thought was it didn't speak to this award in a way that I always felt that it should be. Let me just show you all real quick. This is the award itself. It was commissioned by Kevin Morgan, who is one of our local artists. It was also, oh shoot, I have it around here somewhere. Anyway, Kevin Morgan teamed up with 2 other artists, local artists, a glass blower as well as a woodworker, and created this, I think, gorgeous award. So it's completely handcrafted. It's all the woodwork itself. The wood is locally harvested here in southeastern Ohio. And so I think the commission, as well as I, am proud to be able to give this to someone because it's an award deserving of what the individuals who are receiving them are being noted for. Last year, Larry Jegman received the 2015 award. He received a plaque. I'm going to have Larry come up because we'd always promised Larry that he was going to get one of these. So Larry's actually the first recipient of the award. Larry, like I said, was awarded in 2015, the 2015 honoree, and is presented with the first award. He retired from Ohio University as a professor in special education. He served the Havar Residential Services Board for 30 years, long time, Larry. One of the founding commissioners in 2004. He's led the commission as chair, continues to coordinate this annual event, as you may have noticed, and has done a fine job as usual, Larry. And he continues to assist many people with disabilities throughout the county. Larry, I am not only pleased but honored to give you this award, sir. Our second recipient, so this year's recipient, 2016, again, also extremely honored to present this award. Vicki, if you would please come forward. Vicki Pletcher and her family is here as well. The whole family can come up if they want to, which is fine. That's what I would do too. I'll just stay back here, which is fine. Michael Pletcher, or as I have always known Mike, Mike Pletcher is the recipient of the 2016 Athena Award. It was probably the fastest voting I had ever seen with the Commission on Disabilities when we put the nomination forward for posthumously giving this to Mike. I worked with Mike. I got to know Mike through the Commission on Disabilities. Mike, to me, was always the brightest of the bright spots when it came to commission's meeting because he was always cutting up. He was quick, he was quirky. Everything he would say to me, I'd have to tilt my head a little and go, what? Wonderful person. He and I also served together on something Dennis asked both of us early on to become part of Havar's community action team, which is a great team where Scott put together 9 individuals. Mike was one of them from its inception, as was I and some other people, to where we use our social networks, our social equity to try to find and brainstorm the ways in which we could find jobs for clients who came before us that Scott would introduce us and we would go through discovery and find out what they wanted to do. And Mike was in that every single time we had someone. He was always coming up with great ideas for what might be meaningful employment for someone who had come before the CAT team. Mike served his entire career in clinical rehabilitation and as a substance abuse counselor while working professionally as the director of ATCO, which he did for many years, 30 years or long time, from what I understand. He engaged with active members in the Athens community, or the Athens Commission on Disabilities. And like I said, very active there. And a lot of times he was a friend with his former clients that he saw. And all of these qualities to the Commission on Disabilities, and I think for Athens, totally exemplifies the spirit of what the Athena Award, what it means. So Vicki, I almost with tears, I am so happy and proud to give this to you for Michael Pletcher and all he served and all that he did.
Well, on behalf of Michael, his daughter Kelly, our whole family, and myself, I'm really honored to be able to accept this recognition of Mike's work and this award. I think he would have been surprised, and I know he would have been completely delighted to find out that he won it. And he would have been scared to death to come up here and accept it. So it's kind of good that he can be here tonight in a different way. And I'm sure he's smiling big and enjoying so many people that he cared so much about here. I just wanted to say one more thing. I don't know if you all know how important you were to Michael in these past few years. When his disability made it so that he couldn't continue work with the community he loved, he kind of felt like he lost his purpose, he lost his spark. He didn't feel like he had a mission or a place. And when he got involved with the Disability Commission and later with HAVAR, he started getting that spark back. And I'm really grateful for that. I wasn't going to be able to get through this tonight. This is worse than the funeral. But all of his family and I do say thank you for that, for befriending him, for realizing what a man he was. Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes tonight's, the 2016 Disability Speaks. This is a big crowd, and for those of you who came to attend tonight, care for your family, for all your friends. Laura Meyer's here. I've known Laura for a while now, and she has also been in the trenches. I shouldn't say trenches. She's been on the forefront on the OU side, Ohio University side of things when it comes to our efforts. I know Diane Bouvier in the back. She also has led the charge on the OU side when it comes to inclusion and accessibility. I just want to recognize those who have done a lot of work. We've got a lot more work ahead of us. We are just scratching the surface. As my service safety director mentioned, the minute I took office as mayor, I'm sitting there going, where's the lift to get up these 5 sets of steps? It's the simple things that we as able-bodied people that we take for granted, and we can't do that. It's time to change and level that playing field so that what we truly do become is a truly accessible and inclusive city that we claim that we are, and that we are. We're working in that direction, but we need to really put our money where our mouth is and make sure that we are serving everyone to where it doesn't become this recognizable world full of accessibility elements and whatnot. It's just the seamless thing that we all live in, and we all sit there and go, okay, this is how things should be, to where everybody is treated equally. Accessibility, we lose the word accessibility over time because we start doing things right all the time, first time. All right.
I was asked permission to say a minute or two. There was a question earlier, what can we do? And many times we were asked. When I was a teacher in Independence, Missouri, I was asked to go teach at the special ed school. 1 period a day. Then it grew. And I was an advanced arts teacher. And then I became a physical education teacher. And my days grew to full-time and not 1 period. And then it became the family. Because it's a family of people that you're actually working with, even though you may think it's one person. And I work with a group from the Sheltering Arms, Heritage Commons, and Carpenter Hall. Buildings for people with disabilities. The most compassionate, helpful, maybe low income, but if you need something, we'll share what we've got. And I learned how to care for each other by the way they care with each other. And there are moments of pain in that. You're asked to do stuff when you're not ready. And you really need to be there. And I close with this because it's such a dramatic experience for me that brings tears. And
we were in the middle of one of our meetings at Heritage Commons. And a fellow came up and he said, we need to take Tanya home. Tanya's in a wheelchair. Tanya has a respiratory problem. And I didn't know what really that meant, and so I watched him and see he was starting to put things together. So we started to get Tanya in the car from her wheelchair, and she kind of falls asleep in the front seat beside me. And her husband's trying to wake her up. She won't wake up. So I reach over and check her pulse, which was not there. We went straight to the emergency room. And they said, doesn't look good. They gave her 3 shots to try to reactivate the heart. And then finally started beating. And they sent her to Riverside. And the belief is that it wasn't really the heart that was the original problem. It was the breathing. And they gave up on her on Tuesday. So we lost a lady who was so special. Before she left, that same day, in that same meeting, her husband has a birthday this Saturday. And we all expressed our appreciations to Jeff White for his friendship that we have with him. And so his wife says, I really appreciate you, Jeff, because you helped me get in and out of my wheelchair, you helped me get dressed, you helped do the cooking at the place. And there's so many things that you do for me. I love you so much. And that was the last love words that she was able to express to her husband. So with this thought, what are those love words that we need to share to the many people in our lives, including those who are able, and maybe our neighbor or family member who's having some difficulty? God bless you. Tell them that you love them. We all need to hear it.
Thank you, Randy. I want to thank everyone who shared your disabilities, for those of you who do live with disabilities, and for those of you who took on the challenge. As we say at the end of every disabilities challenge by choice, Disability Speaks. Now that we've been exposed for a short period of time, share with everyone else around you so that you can tell them what your experience was like. That's the whole purpose of holding this event. Thank you everyone for coming tonight, and enjoy the rest of the evening.